Okay, I feel like if you've been listening to this podcast for long enough, of which it doesn't even have to be that long, but if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you probably know that one of the things that I like dealing with, or should I say that I usually like discussing on this podcast, is dilemmas. Dilemmas are one of my favorite things to actually discuss because it forces me, or at least it forces us to think about things from a couple of different angles. But the other thing that I also like, which probably I don't mention as much, is direct questions from the opposite sex. Because instead of going through this entire tangent on blah, 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 who did this, who said what, when you get a direct question, it actually does kind of put me, or at least it kind of puts us in this position where we try to figure out the answers to said question or to said questions. Because when you kind of think about it, a direct question can answer a lot of things as opposed to trying to put things into a scenario which can give people different thought points on certain things. But, all in all, I actually do really like direct questions. And in this particular episode, I have one direct question that I want to deal with. But before I can get into that, I probably should have started with an intro. So in typical fashion, let me say, welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is Sir Nanva B. This is a much shorter, less edity, no instrumentally version of the podcast, where I basically just talk about one topic, and basically that's it. It's usually one of those episodes that I always have whenever I'm on R&R, and I'm sort of taking a break from the full ones, and it means that I'm still on break, stuff like that. But anyways, greetings and pleasantries aside, I have a direct question that came from a lady, and I really, really want to get into it because it's such a juicy question. But before I can get into that, and yes, I know, juicy question doesn't sound like something that you'd expect from your 2026 bingo card. But, here we are. And it's not even the middle of the year. But anyways, a lady hopped online and asked a very direct question, which someone else chose to answer. And I want to kind of step in and add to the answers as well. Now, the question that she asked, if you saw the title, does relate to men and being great friends, but not that great at being boyfriends. And it is something that I feel needs to be discussed because in as much as people think that the difference between a guy friend and a boyfriend is usually like very small or like a very fine line, actually there's a pretty stark difference, and that difference can be what it is that makes the difference between you having a guy friend and you turning that guy friend into a boyfriend. Now, I want to get into the entire thing, but first let me let this clip play. It's a bit of a long one, about 3 minutes, but at least it does give context and it gives someone's explanation before I can get into mine. So, without further ado...
Serious question for the men and the men only. Why the are y'all so good at being friends, but you suck as boyfriends? Please. We need answers.
I am so glad you asked. That is a fascinating question with a fascinating answer. Sorry, this is for something else. And the answer, of course, is this shit. You know about money, don't you? I'm sure you remember it from the last time someone gave it to you for free. So the reason that it's easier for us to be your friends is that it doesn't cost money. Relationships cost money. You know about money, right? Have you ever earned money? Have you ever had a job? Was it really hard? Me too. Did it pay enough? Me neither. So then we don't have enough money to be a good boyfriend. We used to earn more than you. This would be the female average and the male average right there. And you were looking for men who made more than you, which was easy when men made more than you. But you didn't like that. You wanted equal pay, and now that you have it, you are still looking for, just like before, men who make more than you. So when we made more than you, we could give you some of it, and that was the act of being a good boyfriend. Now that we make the same, we still have to give you some, which most of us cannot afford anymore, because the average guy no longer has what the average girl is looking for. This large number of women here, this tall line, is pursuing this small number of men here, this short line. Whereas before, the average woman who was looking for more than she had a much higher percentage of men to pick from. So all of these dynamics, all of this stuff about how money has changed the dating market, those things do not matter if we are friends, because this is not what friends are. If I had a friend and it cost me money to be her friend, I would stop being her friend. I have dated a lot of women. I have also had a lot of female friends. Do you know what the difference is? Number one, we don't Number two, they never say things like, you never take me anywhere exciting. You remember Robbie? He bought jewelry for his friend. That part of the relationship is missing. I once had a really good friendship with a woman. She was married. They both had money and I did not. So when we would hang out, she would buy things for me because that's what friends do. That's why I was able to be a good friend, because it was not out of my price range. Women seem not to understand that they cost money. That being a good boyfriend means transferring monetary value. And nobody has money anymore. It's been a relentless 50-year decline.
We need answers.
The answer is really simple. Think about how hard it is for you to go to work and get paid enough to afford stuff. And then just remember that you are stuff that we can no longer afford. Men have to work. We do not just have magic money printers, at least not all of us. So yeah, the answer is money. This is the situation now. You cost too much. We cannot do this anymore because we do not have this anymore. I hope that helps.
Okay. Particularly interesting question that was asked there, and even more particularly interesting was the response that was given. Mans went into how, like, the money equation has messed up the dating game, or at least how it's made it harder for a lot of guys to seem like great boyfriends. And honestly, like, I don't see why the guy is wrong about that. Like, okay, don't get me wrong. There's women that make good money themselves and don't expect as much, and, you know, they can even treat their mans out. Hell, there's even babes that handle the bills, and, you know, they're very comfortable doing that because the person that they're with is so worth it that they actually don't mind doing that because they make more. You know, stuff like that. There's dynamics like that that are contrary to popular opinion on how relationships are supposed to be. But besides that, there's a lot of what this guy is saying that is very, very true. But that said, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the entire explanation to it, because the money part actually does make a shit ton of sense. Because, you know, if you are looking at it from the point of, you know, what messed up the dating market more than what people would describe as like social media and too many options, I'd probably say like money and how like pay gaps and women making more might have actually messed up the dating market to a certain degree. Not that I want them to make less, but, you know, it could have actually changed the dating market and not necessarily for the better. But honestly, I feel like that is one component out of a bunch of different reasons that I would probably put. And when I look at it, yes, there's the money part, but there's way more to it than just money. Because the money represents something that, or at least the money represents two things, which I feel separate the idea of being a boyfriend and being a good guy friend in a way, actually three things, because I have three reasons why, in a way that shows the stark difference and why a lot of guys may not want to become boyfriends, because it might actually be harder for them to perform as opposed to being great friends. Now, each and every one of these reasons that I'm going to give is actually a versus. It's not like one statement. It's just one thing versus the other, so that at least it can give a pretty good breakdown. So the very first one is choice versus responsibility. When you look at being a guy friend, like the choice of how you get to interact with the person and the fact that you need to interact with the person, like a lot of that comes down to choice. So you can choose to meet up with them, you can choose to talk to them, you can choose to listen to whatever it is they want to tell you. And even when it comes to more extreme situations, you can choose to protect and you can choose to provide. When you're a boyfriend, on the other hand, a lot of those things are considered actual responsibilities. Like, it is your responsibility to protect her, it is your responsibility to listen to her, it is your responsibility to ensure that she is happy, at least to some degree. it is your responsibility as her man to come through for her in ways that other men could come through for her, but because you're the main man, you have to be the one to come through for her in most, if not almost all of those ways. So that kind of does become a bit of like a weight that a lot of guys, especially today, don't like handling, which is why there's a lot fewer guys that are very okay with getting into a relationship straight. A lot of times they'll want to kind of like take their time, maybe get into a situationship and shit. So oftentimes that responsibility, because it's a weight for us as guys, just doesn't make the idea of being a boyfriend seem all that appealing when it comes to dating most girls. Then the second one is request versus obligation. If a woman wants something from a guy friend, they request. If it's handling the bill, it's almost like a request. It's not like he is obligated to do it, as opposed to if he was the boyfriend. If he is the boyfriend, if the babe gets up and leaves the bill, it is your obligation as the man to sort out said bill. If she has called you after having a very shitty day and wants to complain about her boss and the colleagues and discuss whatever office drama affected her that day, for you as a guy friend, you can simply say, hey, look, I'm a little bit busy right now. Can we talk about this later in the evening? And it'll be perfectly okay. If you're the boyfriend, you don't really have that liberty, not unless if you're doing something that is very, very intense and super important to the point where it's like, oh no, this is something that is bigger than the two of us. So for the most part, like, you have to sit and listen to whatever it is that she has to say, whether you like it, whether you don't, whether you feel like you should be listening or you shouldn't. Because at the end of the day, it is your obligation as her man's to be there for her when she is not having a great time or if she is not doing all that well. Then the third one is selective demand versus absolute demand. Okay? When you are her guy friend, it is not like she can demand your time and she can demand, your presence every single fucking time. She'll do it whenever she feels it's convenient or whenever she wants to open up. But essentially, at any point where she feels like, she can demand for it, she can try and kind of request it, but it's not like she can really, really demand for it all the time. Boyfriend, on the other hand, that demand is basically absolute. If she wants you to be there for her, you kind of have to be there for her as her boyfriend. If you want to, do something, but she's like, no, but I wanted you here with me, you kind of have to be there. If not, you have to have a particularly good reason, and even in some cases, you should be able to make up for it. Like, your demands as a boyfriend aren't by choice, or you can pick and choose which ones you want to cater to. You're expected to cater to as many of them as possible, if not all of them. And as such, that kind of does explain why it is that just being a guy friend is so much easier than being a boyfriend, because when you're being a boyfriend, that's all of this weight that you have to carry. But when you're a guy friend, you can move around freely. Like, there's a certain likeness to it that I don't think many women actually recognize the difference in. But all in all, if I was to basically take everything that I've said and wrap it into like one reason that would probably serve as what you could classify as the most complete reason for why it is guys make for better friends and boyfriends, it's the fact that we're a friend when we're needed, but we're a boyfriend all the time. Like, let me put it like that. Like, we're a friend when she needs us to be a friend, but when she has a boyfriend, you're a boyfriend all the fucking time. Whether it's 3 a.m. or 3 p.m., whether it's 9 a.m. or 9 p.m., whether she's hurt or whether she's happy. But you can be a friend when she's hurt, you can be a friend when she's happy, you can be a friend when she wants to go on drinks, and you can be a friend in case she wants to do a bunch of other shit. Like, at the end of the day, it's just easier being a guy friend than being a boyfriend. But all in all, to kind of conclude all of this, because I've basically been running around answering this one question with this entire explanation, let me just say this. The biggest problem facing a lot of guys whenever it comes to the idea of being boyfriends, in my opinion at least, comes down to the fact that whenever you look at the idea of being a good or a great boyfriend, Most women judge how good a boyfriend is based off of how uncomfortable they can make the guy and how far they can basically take the guy, or he can take himself without actually snapping. If they did the same thing with friends and they saw the results of that, maybe, just maybe, they would try to treat their boyfriends a little bit more like friends and a lot less like the how far can you go for me just so that you can prove that you love me types. Otherwise, like, for the most part, I think guys can be great friends and great boyfriends as well. It's just, y'all ask for so much nowadays that it kind of becomes hard to be one as opposed to the other, for fairly obvious reasons. But then again, I could be wrong about this, I could be right. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG. It is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.